and memes films. I'm your host, Vincent, aka... Did I write AKAs or did
No, that's literally why I told you right before you started the episodes that you didn't write AKAs.
Okay.
Or an episode title.
Well, we'll wing it. I'm the Elephant Stan. I stan the Elephant Man.
Okay.
I'm joined by my ever-attentive co-host, also spoilers, so watch out. And I'm joined by my ever-attentive co-host, my best friend, my pal, my amigo, my Drew, Jonathan.
AKA David with a little pinch of salt.
So, today, we're going over the 1980 British-American historical drama film, Elephant Man. We're going to give you a basic ass intro telling you why it's important, going over the Wikipedia plot summary, giving you some IMDb and Google reviews, and giving you a terrible, so terrible last time we get. Why is it terrible, Jonathan?
Because we don't know what the hell we're doing, just like our AKAs, apparently.
If you want to follow the film, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Anthony Todd. You can find us at youtube.com/Anthony Todd Show. And you can find us at Podbean, Stitcher, Google Play Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and I think Google Play Podcast is the one I miss. Not Pornhub. By searching the Anthony Todd Show in your favorite podcast browser. Elephant Man, it's a 1980 British-American historical drama film. It is based on Joseph McCarrick, who was... deformed and coined the Elephant Man because of his deformities, because he looked like an elephant, I think. It's
really... So, this film touches on weird aspects of history, but then kind of doesn't get it correct.
Yeah.
The name of the Merrick is changed.
Yeah.
In the movie. In the movie, is like John, right? John Merrick.
Yeah,
but his actual name in real life was Joseph.
Yeah.
But one of the things that people would like say about the Elephant Man is like, in the sideshow that he was a part of, they would say he was like, oh, his mother was like, had sex with an elephant.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, she was trampled by an elephant in birth. And he didn't look like an elephant. Like with his, I'm trying to remember what his deformity was. It's like an actual like real life one.
I forgot to write it down in the notes.
Yeah. But it was basically just like a weird like marketing gimmick, I guess.
I think it's actually in one of the reviews later on. So we'll touch upon it then.
But there's other elements that are like hinted at or that are questioned in reality, like versus the film version. But the film isn't based on the reality; it's based on more of the book. And I think there was like a play.
There's two books. I think one of them might be a play too. The play came a year before.
Yeah.
So it's based on Frederick Travis, The Elephant Man, and Other Reminiscences in 1923, and Ashley Montagu's The Elephant Man: A Study in Human Dignity in 1971. It's David Lynch's second feature film after Eraserhead.
It's his first, you could almost say, big budget film.
Studio film.
His first real true studio film was Dune. This one more just had like a little bit more backing because it was kind of produced by Mel Brooks.
Yeah. Uncredited because he didn't want people to think this was a comedy.
Yeah, he didn't want his name to be associated with it because he's Mel Brooks. He's fucking a comedic legend. And this was obviously not supposed to be a comedy, and he didn't want people associating like what they already associated his name with this film.
Yeah.
So he was very key in the making of this film, but then he purposely took his name off of it so that people wouldn't associate the wrong things with the film.
It's directed and has a screenplay done by Lynch. Also has Christopher DeVore and Eric Bergen on the screenplay. It stars John Hurt and Anthony Hopkins, and it has excellent, brilliant practical makeup done by Chris Tucker. He later would do what's the movie with Jackie Chan?
Rush Hour.
Rush Hour, yeah. He did the Rush Hour trilogy.
I literally have never seen any of those.
But it's not actually Chris Tucker. It's Christopher Tucker.
The main reason I haven't seen him is the director of them is somebody I hate.
Okay, so I don't care. I thought the first one's a stupid 90s comedy. I don't remember anything about it.
Yeah. That's another reason why I don't really like 90s comedies that much.
It was nominated at the Oscars. This is like essentially David Lynch's coming out party after Eraserhead for just general audiences that couldn't handle Eraserhead. So this is a little bit more, it's more normal, but it still has some Lynchian elements at times.
This is the film that started what Blue Velvet would have cemented in terms of creating his popularity and his legacy.
He was nominated. This film was nominated at the Oscars for Best Director, Adapted Screenplay, Picture, and Actor. A couple others that I forgot, but it wasn't nominated for Academy Award for Best Makeup and Hairstyling
because that technically exists. It sometimes did. There would be like special like before the official category existed, there'd be like special, like, and a special like shout out to blank movie for blank effects and or other things like that.
The category was created in 1981 as the Academy Award for Best Makeup after the Academy received complaints that the makeup work in The Elephant Man was not going to be honored. Although no award was given to The Elephant Man, an entire category dedicated to honoring makeup effects in the film was created for subsequent ceremonies. So basically, Elephant Man walked so Suicide Squad can run and win an Oscar. Without Elephant Man, Suicide Squad would not have won an Oscar.
So I love this movie. This is actually the first David Lynch film I ever saw.
Not surprising.
I saw it right before I saw Eraserhead because I bought them at the exact same time, and this one just showed up in the mail first because I had to get them from 2 different sources. And I absolutely adore this film. For a while, it was on my like top 20 list of favorite films of all time. But you know, maybe it didn't need to exist. If that's what it's going to end up creating, is an Oscar for Suicide Squad.
I think this film is an excellent display into the winding path of a director, and that's why it's important, because it showcases more of the financially successful, more not popular, but more or like poppy choice, but more of a wider audience range drama film with elements of body horror that comes from actual deformity. So
I wouldn't label this film as body horror.
I wouldn't, because it has historical elements. It isn't the whole entire purpose, but it has.
It takes what Freaks was starting in terms of the recognition of like differently abled people with some like extreme like deformities and disabilities in forms of. In Freaks, you had like multiple paraplegics, you had people who had like no arms or legs and like all these different things, and whereas that film was trying to like make a point where they're humans too, they need to be treated with respect. Because of the way that film was, because it was a horror film, it didn't get quite the right reaction where people were pissed off that they pretty much attacked the normal air quote people who were the villains of the story because they were selfish and greedy and cruel, and the freaks of the sideshow were actually like the kind, decent people, except for the one guy, cheating on his wife. That's not cool. But and then audience are like, well, I don't want to see that. I don't want to be held accountable for being shitty. And so just because it's a horror film, there's like a lot of problematic elements that they shoot the freaks in like a horror way where like sometimes they utilize their difference to create the idea of horror. This film ignores that aspect. It's not a horror film at all. It utilizes David Lynch's surrealist elements, but not in a way to present the Elephant Man as the other, which is something that I think Freaks did too much. Was it presented them, while it's trying to make them not the other, it still presented them as the other. In this film, it actually presents air quote normal people as the other, with the Elephant Man being the normal. And it utilizes surrealist elements to present history of backstories of things. Like it does these openings and like this weird surrealist like setup with like very bizarrely shot sequences to suggest the misunderstanding of like his history that is presented to people, of how he was born and how he got these medical issues and these deformities. And so it uses David Lynch's surrealism to present not history, but how people view history, how people view other people. And so it utilizes David Lynch's very unique style of filmmaking. And it still has a lot of like industrial settings, which he obviously had a shit ton of in Eraserhead.
And also at the same time, the makeup is very not off kilter to what would be in Eraserhead. Like I compare the Elephant Man makeup to not the exact same, but it's similar in almost scope or gravity as the opening guy in the what even is that? I don't know what you would call him.
The man, I think they call him like the man in the planet is what they call him in like the credits, or the woman in the radiator, like to a much lesser extent. But so the film has a lot of like the clear Lynchian elements that were established in Eraserhead, which I think is why, because Mel Brooks said that like he wanted him to make this film when he saw Eraser, and I think why, because he probably saw all that David Lynch would do with this film and the script in Eraserhead, but just flipping them around a little bit.
Yeah. It cements David Lynch's career as, even though it's a more wider audience ranging film, it cements him as continuing to push boundaries in his own unique ways and develop his own style, even though it's not it's not like peak Lynch, if that makes sense.
This film is definitely not. Usually there's two films that are like thrown out as like the best. Two and free-ish films are thrown out as like the best David Lynch films. Usually, Mulholland Drive, Blue Velvet, and Eraserhead. Mulholland Drive by the normies, Eraserhead by weirdos like me, and Blue Velvet by the people who are just into that, to the Twin Peaks obsessed David Lynch fans. People who are mostly into David Lynch because of his work in Twin Peaks will usually throw out Blue Velvet because even they can recognize A Fire Walk with Me is kind of shit.
Yeah.
But, and I think this also cements David Lynch's versatility as a filmmaker, because while it's not as straightforward as The Straight Story, it's a shockingly emotional film.
Yeah.
One thing that, like, while Lynch's films do play mostly with emotion, it plays with it in a different way than this film does. This film not only plays with like the emotion of its audience, but also the emotions of its characters.
Yeah.
A lot of his films have a purposely soap opera-esque performance to it, whereas this has a very legitimate, natural, like actual acting performance.
John Hurt
and Anthony Hopkins both deliver great performances in this.
John Hurt delivers the most true to form what I would imagine someone who has that type of deformity would sound like. It's very wet. It's very growly. It very is awkward. It makes sense, but it shows the effort of someone who is trying.
Yeah.
So it isn't just like him making weird noises or attempting to replicate something. It's showcasing an effort in the aspect of actually being able to talk.
Yeah, and it also, like, despite having to do all that, he still gets the emotions of the character, like, so well tuned. And Anthony Hopkins, though this is one of the historical accuracies where people criticize this film a little bit, but this film was based on the book by the character Anthony Hopkins plays. I always forget his name. It's the first book that was Frederick.
Yeah.
Trevi, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but people criticize Frederick because he basically did the same thing that the sideshows did to Merrick, but he did it in a scientific way where he still basically just took him and then he put him on display. Obviously, in this book about himself, he presented himself in a much more sympathetic light.
Yeah.
And since this movie is based mostly on the book, his character is going to be presented in a more sympathetic light. Anthony Hopkins brought that fictionalized version of the character very well into this film. This is one of the few films that made me, for starters, I don't cry in films.
Yeah,
period.
because you don't have tear ducts.
Mostly because my tear ducts don't fucking work. But
that's not a joke. It's real life.
Yeah, that's real life. But very few films make me emotional because I don't connect to films on that way. I'm much more connected to films on a, I guess, I don't want to say intellectual, but like that's how I view films. I view films more as like an analytical way. Some films do have emotional connections to me. Tree of Life is one of them. Eraserhead's one of them. This film's one of them. I do connect the films emotionally, but they don't usually hurt me because I separate them from reality too heavily. This is one of the few films like actually gets like a genuine emotional like pain out of me.
Yeah, because it's just so not far from what it actually feel like you would assume what it would be.
Yeah,
and it doesn't like. Well, I think like you said, liberties of the main doctor. I do not know the historical scope of what that actually would entail.
Yeah,
but I think for the story point of the story, it adds this fictionalized version of real life. It adds nice character arcs. It adds depth. It actually makes sense. You would think he would have some empathy in the role. He would.
Yeah.
In the position he had in actually causing the downfall of the Elephant Man. It makes sense, even though I like with most historical films or biopics or whatever you want to call
They're
them,
never accurate.
they're never accurate. But in this one, everything that may have been a change makes sense to the general story.
Yeah, and
And it's not like Bohemian Rhapsody where they're just throwing so many ideas together.
and it's not like Bohemian Rhapsody where like by changing history they also kind of miss the point of history.
Yeah.
Because like in Bohemian Rhapsody we're like tiptoeing around like the actual like life of Freddie Mercury and adding like all of this like, well, everything came super easy, and they kind of actually removed like the scope of like their actual struggles, and also removes like the tragedy of Freddie Mercury's ultimate death a little bit. This film, like, it has, because it utilizes Lynch's Lynchian surrealism, it's already kind of separated out from history.
Yeah.
It's a historic piece, but like it's also clearly a piece of art.
Yeah.
Not just a piece of like historical fiction.
Yeah.
Or like a fictionalized version of history, or just like a biopic.
Yeah.
And so because of that, you can take more liberties because it's very clear like there's also like a meaning and a point behind this film. And there's an artistic drive and a purpose behind all of it.
Time to go to the Wikipedia summary. People will watch films. They read the Wikipedia summary and decide what they actually.
Yeah, I've never actually seen this movie. I've only read the Wikipedia.
So Frederick Treves, a surgeon at the London hospital, finds Joseph McCarrick in a Victorian freak show in London's East End, where he is kept by Mr. Bites, an alcoholic, sadistic, despicable, and heartless showman. His head is hooded. The hood is the most like David Lynch looking character.
And it's iconic too.
Yeah.
Like that. I don't know. Did you ever hear about a weird little Christian thing called Adventures in Odyssey?
No.
So Adventures in Odyssey was something that, because I was raised ungodly religious, was a key part of my childhood. It started off as like a radio show, and it was like every, I think it was like week or so. I never kept up with the actual show because the channel or like frequency, it was like terrible like reception where I lived. But I had like most of the CDs because they would then turn them into CDs, and it was like this long ass fucking story following the city of Odyssey and its super Christian roots. And the main character, I don't even remember his name. I think it's like Whitaker or something like that. And he had like a time machine basically. And but like half the time the time machine didn't even come into play. And he had like this arch nemesis who at some point became like a digital monster. There's some weird shit going on in that show.
So it's just Doctor Who.
Yeah. It's Christian Doctor Who, actually. That's a fucking really good description, actually. And there was like a bunch of relationship dramas too. Characters fucking died a shockingly large amount on a show for kids. But it also had a TV show version, an animated TV show version that I also watched the shit out of. And there's a fucking episode that's just a ginormous reference to the Elephant Man. And in it, one of the characters, because like the time machine would sometimes go back in time, but also like transports you into the bodies of other people. Mm-hmm. And one of the episodes, the main character, Dylan, went back and became the Elephant Man. Super, like, I kind of get what they were going for, because the message was, don't judge other people based on their appearances, because shit like that. But like it had it was less based on history and more based on David Lynch's film. Like he had the hood and everything. And I'm just like, I was literally exposed to David Lynch's The Elephant Man because of a fucking shitty ass Christian TV show, because the hood is kind of iconic now in pop culture in a weird ass way.
Yeah. The hood's excellent. I don't know if there's any historical background to the hood, but I think for David Lynch, it fits any descriptors you would have about his work.
Yeah.
It is rigged. It is,
it has a weird ass hat on the top of it.
Yeah. It is, just, there's some genuinity to it, even though you know what underneath it's probably wholesome.
It's something that you would legitimately believe that like a sideshow would do.
Yeah.
But like it's done in a very Lynchian way.
Yeah. You would expect it to have 2 eye holes instead of 1, and maybe a mouth hole.
And not a weird little hat on top.
Yeah, maybe not just 1 eye hole. Yeah. His head is kept hooded, and his owner, who views him as intellectually disabled, is paid by Travis to bring him to the hospital for examination. Travis presents Merrick to his colleagues and highlights his monstrous skull, which forces him to sleep with his head on his knees, since if he were to lie down, he would asphyxiate. On Merrick's return, he is beaten so badly by bites that he has to call Travis for medical help. Travis brings him back to the hospital. Merrick is tended to by Mr. Mothershead, the formidable matron, and one thing I'm just a little bit teeny confused by, but I think I can understand the mechanisms of it. I want to go back to it before I forget. Is when he's presenting him to his colleagues, he's like, we've seen him. We've seen the Elephant Man. The reveal's been shown. It's why I get, probably because he's naked and he's probably showcasing everything, but at the same time, not saying this is also PG film, so
yeah,
makes sense. But like, also at the same time, he doesn't have to be like naked. He could just be like in his underwear or something like that. But also, if that's the historical drama, if he had,
I also wonder a little bit if that was David Lynch slyly like hinting at the reality of the situation underneath it was the exploitation.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. But like, I just found that a little bit strange that we got the reveal and then it's kind of hidden a little bit. And the other nurses are too frightened of him. Mrs. Cargon, the hospital's governor, is against housing Merrick, as the hospital does not accept incurables. To prove that Merrick can make profits, Travis trains him in a few conversational sentences. Cargo sees through the ruse, but as he is leaving, Merrick begins to recite the 23rd Psalm. Psalm.
The Bible is all about palm reading, it turns out, actually.
Jesus. Oh, wow. That's cool.
Satan. Fuck.
It continues to pass the part that Travis taught him. McCarrick tells the doctors that he knows how to read and has memorized the 32nd Psalm because it is...
You keep saying palm.
Yeah, I know. I knew it on purpose now.
Oh, okay.
It's funny.
Fair enough.
I have a friend whose dad...
You have a friend?
Yeah.
That's surprising.
I think you know what friend I'm talking about.
Is it Seymour?
Yeah. His dad was like a Christian basketball coach for like Seymour, and he said it like in a ridiculous way. Wasn't it like Psalm?
It was like Psalm. Was it? Did they have like a hard P, like Psalm?
Yeah, I think that's what it was, probably.
Oh man, people like that. It's psychology.
What would it be? Psychopathic records. You always gotta throw it at Insane Clown Posse, right?
If Insane Clown Posse doesn't start pronouncing their shit that way, I'm gonna be pissed.
You're gonna be pissed. Oh my god. Cargon permits him to stay, and that whole entire read where he's reading the song is just so moving, and it's so it's that all of David Lynch's films, regardless of what they are, I think kind of take place not canonically. Like, I don't think they actually all exist in the same world, but I think they take place almost in his own head of what a world is.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like Straight Story, they're more normal, but they have a absurdist premise. Or like this, it's normal. It's more recommendable to our reality, but it's taking the surreal elements of what our reality actually is and forcing that to the hardest extent. I think that's one of the moments where him reading the scripture comes into a position because it's just so strange. It's like a final outcry of hope, and it just comes off as just so moving, captivating, but also like you feel so much empathy for him that it is truly just a strange oddity of a scene that is so executed to the fullest extent that everyone in the scene, all their motivations make sense.
Yeah.
And are played out to the fullest. McCarrick has tea with Travis and his wife and is so overwhelmed by their kindness. He shows them his mother's picture. He believes he must have been a disappointment to his mother, but hopes she will be proud to see him with his lovely friends. McCarrick begins to take guests in his room, including the actress Madge Kendall, who introduces him
There's
to...
no R in there. Where did you come up with Kendall?
I'm on my phone, tiny font, but also I might be dyslexic, so...
That's fair, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Who introduces them to the work of Shakespeare, Merrick...
Shakespeare?
That was just mispronunciation.
Yeah, that one I knew was just... Because, like, even if, like,
That one is, we've been talking for like an hour. We did a show before
like,
this. And
yeah, that one's one of the ones, like, even if with dyslexia, like, you know how to say
Shakespeare.
it's Shakespeare.
yeah. Merrick quickly becomes an object of curiosity to high society, and Mrs. Mother said expresses concern that he's still being put on display as a freak. Travis begins to question the morality of his actions. Meanwhile, a night puller named Jim starts selling tickets to locals to come at night to gawk at the Elephant Man. One thing I will get, Travis, his empathy at first, he's like denying it, but like there's still some weight to denying it.
Yeah.
But then it just becomes like a full on, also because of the dream sequence, which I don't know if it's his dream sequence or it's, I don't know, but I think it comes a little bit too fast, but I also, in the way of everything else in this film, I think it kind of makes sense. I just think it's a little strange momentum.
Yeah.
The issue of Merrick's residence is challenged at the hospital council meeting, but he's guaranteed permanent residence by command of the hospital's royal patron. Queen Victoria sends words with her daughter-in-law, Alexandra. However, Merrick is soon kidnapped by Bites during one of Jim's Ross's late night showings. Bite leaves England and takes Merrick on the road as a curious attraction once again. As witness reports to Travis confirm, who confront I don't know why I said Jim's, multiple Jims, confront Jim about what he has done, and Mother said fires him. Merrick is forced to be an attraction again, but during the show in Belgium, Merrick, who's weak and dying, collapses, causing a drunken Bites to lock him in a cage and leave him to die. One of the most hearting displays of just, even like the people who came to see the freak are turning on him. Like the display, like the initial, like, not kidnapping, but the initial, I would consider it assault when everyone charges his room. That is insane because it's what would happen. Because people who are drunk and also stupid
Are the worst.
Also, it's like there would be like the two girl characters that are in there. They're both like, ew, gross, and then they laugh, and then they're afraid. I think it would actually focus out like that, where there'd just be so many emotions of both mockery and disgust, but not empathy in any way.
Yeah.
That it perfectly matches what that would actually be. The second, like when he's actually on display again as a freak, that's pretty much to a tune. It wouldn't be turned against him. It would be more turned against the visor, because they feel almost neglect in a sense. It's almost like seeing a wounded animal, which is the sickening part, that he's still in this continued form after progressing. He's still treated like an animal.
Yeah.
And there's no getting around that. Merrick manages to escape from Bites with the help of fellow freak show attractions. Upon returning to London, he is harassed through Liverpool Street Station by several young boys and actually knocks down a young girl. Merrick is chased, unmasked, and cornered by an angry mob. He cries, "I am not an elephant. I am not an animal. I am a human being. I am a man," before collapsing. Police.
One of the most like iconic scenes.
Probably the iconic scene.
The single most iconic scene.
Was it in the Christian show you're talking about?
No, I don't think it got that far. Before he time machined back to reality. I think it like stopped like right before that.
The reason it wouldn't happen in that world because Jesus was there.
Yeah.
That's just like,
you need to watch Moral Oral. I feel like you would get a fucking kick out of that show.
I know what the premise of Moral Oral is, but that show you're talking about, like the completely unparody version, is just so brain dead to the point where, like, what you described almost reads Theory of a Dead Man point, where it's just like,
oh, it gets worse. That show got worse.
I bet it was. I bet it does.
We should do an Is It a Film about all of it.
No, we should do Is It a Film with Bible Man.
Oh, fuck. Oh, God. That's you're bringing up some forgotten shit.
That's my Christianity, what is it? Pick a poison.
That, dude, VeggieTales, fucking Bible Man, fucking Adventures in Odyssey.
The guy who was Bible Man also would later be on, I know because I would watch trash reality TV shows as a kid. He would also, I think he was on Celebrity Fit Club, and he was like a drug addict.
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
He was very clearly Bible Man for a paycheck.
Yeah.
Because that was the only acting gig he could get because he was not good.
Policeman returned Merrick to the hospital in Treves and recovers some of his health, but is dying of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Treves and Mother's Head take Merrick to see one of Mrs. Kendall's shows at the theater, and Kendall dedicates the performance to him. A Pride Merrick receives a standing ovation from the audience. So essentially, he's uncomfortable and he's presented as an animal once again. There's no escaping this fate, even in a positive way where they're applauding him for coming out of the shadows. He's
still something to be displayed and gawked at.
Back at the hospital, Merrick thanks Treves for all he's done and completes his church model, which is I don't know, I just think it's a really cool character arc, showcasing something. They showcase they say in like a newspaper article he's capable of high intelligence.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking like that's something pretty typical, which I don't know if there's any attachment or historical orchestra to that, but it's something nice. And when it's smashed later on, in the line saying "it is done" before he essentially would it be considered suicide if it's just like I don't I guess maybe, but
that's another thing that like is talked about historically speaking, was if it was suicide, and also what his motivations behind his suicide was it his tiredness of still being like something to be gawked at, or was it a recognition of the inevitable and a choosing to go out not only on his own terms but doing something that he wanted to do but was unable to?
Could you technically consider it suicide if it's just going to bed?
Well, that's why, because like in the earlier scene they're talking about how like if he were to lie down he'd just quickly die.
No, I know that. I know that, but like is suicide like a one size fits all? So it applies.
That's another reason why it's debatable, because like is it because he knows doing this act will lead to his death? Is that suicide?
No, I'm saying that if you're like I don't know, if you had to classify this as suicide, would it be a suicide? Not the motivations behind it.
Yeah.
Just the act. I think that's in the questionable territory. I just find it interesting. He lies down on his back in his bed, imitating a sleeping child, and a picture on his wall, and dies in his sleep. Merrick is consoled by a vision of his mother, who quotes, "Lord Tennyson's "Nothing will die."
Yeah, and that was the part where I wanted to cry but can't.
Yeah, it's depressing, but I actually really like the ending, even though it's so sad.
It's an ending that like had to be there, because that's
it's
a historical piece and that's what happened. But it's still very, very heartbreaking. But it's heartbreaking, but there's a lot of nuance to it.
Yeah,
and it brings up a lot of questions and ideas and that extend beyond just like the Elephant Man, and also to just the idea of the concept of going out on your own terms.
Yeah.
I have done in school multiple reports on voluntary euthanasia. And so it's a topic that reigns very heavy and true to me. That's just something I've talked about a lot and done a lot of reports on, the idea of choosing to go out and like peacefully in your sleep, as opposed to letting something drag down and take forever.
You heard what we had to say about this film, but now it's time to hear what other people said about this film. On Google reviews, it has an 89% of people who voted on it liked it, which is less than Silent Hill. Dana Rice writes, Kanye West's film debut is beautiful. His role as the prosthetic makeup on John Hurt is unmatched. He deserves an Oscar for his performance. Can you debunk anything that I just said? Like, or not debunk, but can you clarify on what the fuck is he talking about?
I think they're just trying to make fun of Kanye. I think that's literally just it.
Yeah, but like also, this is one of the memes where I just don't understand.
Yeah. Look, great memes nowadays are based on the Dadaist principles of randomness, but sometimes you're just too fucking random for your own good.
4 people found this helpful.
Those 4 people are fucking stupid.
William Whitten says, Jinton Josie is incorrect. The Elephant Man is based on a real historical person, a man who suffered from Proteus syndrome, Joseph McCarrick.
They actually don't know exactly what he had. It's all
today it's known as that NF1 is one of the world's most widespread Mendelian genetic disorders with a prevalence of 1 in 3,000. This is where it got into the interesting part. I met David Lynch while working as a sculptor on Dune. I was mainly involved with the 4-size Guild Navigator, as well as reworking the miniature of the same animal. I did work on some of the Spice Worms as well. David Lynch is quite unique individual, very personable, but odd in many ways as well. He seemed a bit spaced out when I spoke with him. Perhaps that's his natural personality, and I think the symbol, that means, I don't know. 4 people found this helpful. There's no review of the actual film.
No, there's
It's just, I met David Lynch.
a comment on somebody I'm not sure about with Jiten Joshi. Don't know what that's related
It's probably to a review, but I don't think there is replies. So
a factual statement, a semi-factual statement. I think that's what is like most commonly theorized is what Joseph had, or John. His actual name's John. But they don't know.
Yeah.
It's just all theory based on the evidence that still exists.
There isn't a review on there.
And then a discussion about David Lynch, which I've watched numerous videos of people talking about David Lynch, and that seems pretty fair. He's unique. He's very personable. He's very odd in a charming way, but also kind of spaced out.
Time to go on IMDb, where it's a minimum movie database where all the movies are stored, free the movies, but they also have all the reviews there. It has an 8.1 out of 10, which is better than Silent Hill.
Good.
And the first review is from Rem. Actually, no, it's the only review because this one was so long I decided to just make it the only one. It's from Ren M18. The most depressing movie I've ever seen. I wish I have not watched this movie. 1 out of 10. This movie ruined my day. The Elephant Man is about a man who's horribly deformed while still in his mother's womb. He was born deformed, and because of this, he is never able to be treated like a human being. The entire movie revolves around this deformed man being discovered and cared for by a doctor. The doctor and his contemporaries care for the deformed man throughout the movie, but not once is he treated like a normal human being. The kindness that everyone but a small few show him is surface level nonsense. The movie is supposed to show how kindness and love turn this deformed man's life around. This would be true if the kindness and love were genuine. Unfortunately, they were not. I strongly do not recommend this movie. It's about a miserable man who's mistreated and abused his entire life. Not once did I ever believe he was truly happy. This movie, right from the beginning, made me sad, and I honestly wished I never watched it. 3 out of 13 people found this helpful.
It's amazing how you hit all of the points,
but
misunderstand them.
So, yes, he's mistreated. He's never happy.
It's almost like those two things connect somehow?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah.
You ever think maybe about that? You ever think maybe that was the point of the movie?
A majority of the reactions are disingenuous. Mm-hmm. At least everyone besides the main doctor, even though he has some like
questionable motivations,
but like
especially in real life.
But at the end, he acknowledges that. He hits all the main points, but just doesn't understand it.
Yeah.
I think it gets down generally in a movie. This isn't happy. He doesn't have a happy ending.
Yeah, which I have some really, really bad news about life in general for you, bud. It kind of sucks for everyone.
He hit all the points. He just didn't understand. Like, it's so close. This is the almost the holy ground of some reviews where you get the points. You are just so dumb. That's truly it. The issues with this review isn't like just not watching the review, willfully being an asshole about the review, being overly right wing. It's pure stupidity. And not even like pure stupidity. It's like selective stupidity. Because you're not like missing the points. You're not just like ignoring or like not understanding like what's happening. You get all of the points. You have all the pieces. You're just dumb and you can't put them together. Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a fucking great film.
Yeah. A.
S. This is an S tier for me.
I think so. I like it. I think it's
fucking
good.
Wrong.
But I think selective films are an S.
This is an
Eraserhead's S.
All right, Eraserhead is S. This is also S. Not all of David Lynch's films are S tier, and I'm not just talking about Dune.
Yeah, Dune is S tier.
Dune is
S tier.
But I do think this film is genuinely an S tier film.
Yeah. What's the final terrible segment?
We still don't have one.
Yeah, we've been really bad at these the last couple weeks.
Maybe you should start planning them out again.
No, I don't know. Sometimes they just come naturally and they're better that way. I think for this one,
I feel like we should.
I think for this one, anything that we will say probably will end up being offensive. So I think it's better that we cancel it and acknowledge that fact straight up.
Before we get canceled.
A lot of the jokes we would make would be about the Elephant Man, and that's not. I've already did that in one previous review.
I wouldn't do that because I'm not an asshole.
But.
Well, I am an asshole, but just not in that way.
I am an asshole as well, but I think in this context, I don't think we need to do it. We can joke about something. Oh, here's our final take assignment. What are we doing next week?
You're still in your picks.
I know, but I'm on the crossroads right now. So we're not doing Resident Evil. That's out.
Thank God.
Off the table. So we have some good picks. Big Money Hustlers.
Where are we going to watch that?
I don't know. We'll find out. Big Money Rustlers. The Cowboy ICP sequel. Or sequel prequel.
If we do either of them, we're doing the Cowboy one. I don't give a shit.
And then there's something else.
What's the Jacob's Ladder remake?
There's that. But I think we need to get a little more fun, campy, maybe. So maybe some Toxic Adventure.
No, I've never actually seen that.
I haven't seen the entire thing. Either or, we're gonna have some fun next week because this was not depressing. I really enjoyed this film because it's the first time. This is the first time I've seen the film all the way through. I've seen bits and pieces. But,
I've seen this film quite a few times. It took me forever to get a Blu-ray of this film because there's not one in America. I had to get a region-free player and then get I think I got a German language version. There's a British one that was available, but it was $50, and I was able to get a German one. It has the English language option. Obviously, I wouldn't have bought it, but yeah, it took me for fucking ever to get that one on Blu-ray.
So I don't know. Fuck it. We'll do Toxie next week.
Yeah, we'll figure out a way to watch it.
We'll figure it out. It should be fun. Yeah. That's it.
I don't know how I'm gonna fucking watch it, but I'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Until next time, guys. I have been. Oh, if you want to follow the Anthony Todd Show, you can find us at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Anthony Todd. You can find us youtube.com/the Anthony Todd Show. You can find us patreon.com/the Anthony Todd Show if you want to support us monetarily, and Podbean, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts, Spotify. If you want to find the Anthony Todd Show on podcast form, you can find us on your favorite podcast browser. But until then, we're not getting into that today. But until next time, guys, I've been Vincent.
I've been Joppin'.
And see ya, boyos.